All right, well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and I think what I'll be talking about piggybacks on what you just heard very nicely, because where'd that clicker go, by the way? Thank you very much. Thank you. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about how the cloud is changing the nature of business and what you should be thinking about when it comes to software licensing. And Ariel is going to talk about, Layla is going to talk about what the folks over at Gemalto are doing to respond to some of these trends. It's interesting. I've been in this marketplace long enough that I can remember back to previous times when we talked about a lot of these concepts, and there were a number of very popular books that were published, especially in the 80s and 90s, about the excellence of companies and the concept of new business ideas like re-engineering and all the rest. And in the course of this talk, I want to allude to one of those books around the 3 disciplines of market leadership. But what I also want to do is I want to bring it up to date in the context of the new world of not only the cloud, but the connected world of the Internet of Things, and begin to give you some ideas about what that means from a software monetization point of view. As I said, Layla will be following up with some talk about, or some discussion about the tools and techniques for making that happen. And we're going to give you a little bit of a preview of some of the best practices in the form of a scorecard that we've been working on over the past few months as well. So here's the book. This is the book that I was alluding to. How many people remember this book, The Discipline of Market Leaders? Oh, good. There's at least a couple of folks in the room. So for the rest of you, here's the idea. This book became popularized because it began to make the case that back in the 90s, and this is published back in 1995, that if you were going to be a market leader, you could only lead in one of 3 areas. Not in all 3 areas, just one of 3 areas. Either product leadership and differentiation, which you see at the top, operational excellence, which you see kind of to your left, and customer intimacy to the right. And if you think back to that time, you can probably think about various companies who were leaders in each of those categories. And Apple may have been considered a product leader, and HP may have been considered an operational leader. Customer intimacy might have been attributed to a few other major companies back in those days. Now, that was all well and good, and it may have solved businesses' needs back then, but in today's world, we're living with a whole new set of pressures. As you well know, that over the past 10 years or so, we've seen the world change dramatically. And what's happened is customer attitudes have obviously changed, and Shlomo was talking about this in terms of the now economy. The business imperatives have changed, and we all know that in each and every one of our industries, we're finding that the barriers to entry have gone down, and therefore competition has gone up. Technological change happens all around us, especially in this region, where a lot of those technological innovations have been born. And of course, what we've been talking about here is a new set of engagement models which allow you to interact and do business with your customers in new ways, whether it's via the cloud or just through using different business techniques, but primarily driven by the cloud. So again, looking at a book of the past, which is even more true today, the whole idea of the world being flat and, again, globalization changing the competitive landscape, we're all living in that world and taking advantage of that world to, in fact, manage our businesses and make our businesses operate in a more efficient and effective fashion. Most of us don't work within the 4 walls of our office anymore. We tend to borrow space from places like Starbucks and others to be able to do our work in a more mobile fashion. And we as consumers are driving the interaction with our vendors, whether it's in our private lives or in our personal or in our professional lives. So the dynamics continue to change. And as we look at the world, of course, we want more compute power, we want more software functionality at our fingertips, right? Now, a lot of people think this is being driven by the new generation of millennials who grew up on this stuff, but I would be willing to bet that most of you are pretty much as adapted to this new world as anybody else. But I will test you on this. Okay, this is going to be my first test. How many, first of all, of you can read the little caption at the bottom here? And we'll judge whether you can by how much laughter, hopefully, I get from it. For those of you who can, it says, Mom, why is Grandpa's phone stuck to the wall? Okay? Now, here's the test. Raise your hand if you have a phone stuck to the wall or tethered to a wall, one way or another in your home. I see one. Come on, come on, come on. All right, I do too. I'm a man of the cloud, and I still have a landline in my home office. Now, some of these things are kind of hard to get rid of, but the truth of the matter is there's still a place for them. And I think you were alluding to the hybrid cloud. I've been on the road with an unnamed vendor who's still hyping the idea of the mix of public and private resources and on-premise and on-demand resources that go along with that. But there's no question that the cloud has changed everything in terms of the delivery of compute power, the delivery of business applications, and the ability to, in fact, even develop new applications using someone else's platform. But at the same time, what we've seen is an explosion in the development of sensors. And I live in the Boston area, which is the epicenter of a lot of these new developments in nanotechnology. So today you can buy a sensor for a penny on the dollar and put it on almost anything, right? And in combination with the cloud, this has given us the advent of the Internet of Things. And again, in the Boston area, we've got this cluster of startups and established companies, which has been so impressive to many on the outside of Boston that a little company by the name of GE decided to move its headquarters to Boston because they wanted to capitalize on that critical mass of innovation that's happening in this space. Now, I have to admit, even though there are changing economics to what's happening with the Internet of Things because of the cloud and because of nanotechnology, I have kind of a love-hate relationship with this marketplace. I've been talking about it for a long time. I even attended and spoke at the Licensing World event 2 years ago, talking about how all of this thing was going to be exploding. But the truth of the matter is it's taken a lot of time. There's a lot of concern about security, a lot of concern about privacy, but most importantly, there's a lot of challenges associated with, okay, so how do I actually package, price, promote, manage, monitor, measure these things that we're trying to make money on? How do we actually monetize these things? And I'm sure many of you in this audience are dealing with the same issues. There are a lot of challenges associated with this. I had the privilege of hosting a roundtable discussion at the Internet of Things event that happened in Santa Clara back in May. And we had about a dozen people around the table. Many of the folks, like you, I'm sure, come from the technology and software world. And they were talking about the challenges of actually developing and delivering these things. And there was a woman who was sitting next to me who was being very quiet for about the first half hour or so. And at a certain point, she raised her hand and she said, I have to admit, I'm here from, I'm not going to name the enterprise company, but it's a very big enterprise company. You would recognize it as a number and a letter associated with its name. Anyways, she was sitting here and she said to us, she said, I'm from this company. Of course, we all perk up because it's like a real customer is here, right? A real enterprise. She said, we're very interested in this idea and we want to pursue this strategy of connecting all of our products. But we have a fundamental problem. We have an unnamed ERP system that we're in the middle of a 2-year upgrade on. And until that project, which is into the 3rd year now, is completed, we can't package or price any of this stuff, okay? So there's a lot of business challenges, there's a lot of technological challenges, there are a lot of challenges in terms of strategy as well that a lot of people are still focused on. The way I put it is, it could be a panacea, but it's become a Pandora's box for a lot of folks. But there's no question what it's done is it's brought new attention to something that's been happening for a very long time, and that is the automation of a number of industrial segments in the marketplace, with the M2M world now coming out of the shadows, so to speak, to become more mainstream. And the convergence of that idea with the new business terminology around the digital transformation process, right? And the world becoming far more digital, and the nature of the customer engagement with their vendors changing on a day-to-day basis. But it's also changing almost every industry. You know, the most prominent examples are the entertainment and media industries that have been basically obliterated by what's been going on online. And I love this quote from, at the time, the new EVP of Time and the president of People and Entertainment Weekly. He says, "We're competing with digital-first attackers structured differently from us." So the competitive landscape is without question changing. And you know, what it means is we've got to develop new tools, new techniques for figuring out, you know, who is our customer, what is it they want, and how do we solve and satisfy their needs. And of course, a lot of that is centered around what we're all doing in terms of developing software-enabled products and services to meet those needs. So what's interesting, I think, is as we look into these challenges, you know, we discover that the old world of subjective, you know, marketing, you know, the art of marketing, has given way to a far more data-driven, analytics-oriented, more precise and scientific approach to doing the same task. And the same thing is true in almost every business discipline, whether it's in, you know, the manufacturing of products, the development of products, the delivery of those products, or the supporting of those products, never mind the selling of those products, right? And the folks over at Gartner have suggested that, you know, this is changing the way in which businesses operate. You probably remember the infamous quote from them that the CMO would be buying more IT solutions, hardware and software, than their IT CIO friends. Well, this particular forecast on their part was that 89% of marketers can expect to compete primarily based on their customer experience that they're delivering, as opposed to the products and services themselves, that customer experience. And by coincidence, just yesterday I was in Cambridge moderating a panel for an organization called the IT Services Marketing Association, and they're promoting a new idea about the nature of marketing. So how many folks know the 4 Ps of marketing in this room? We got one guy here, give me one. Price, okay. Give me another one. Who's got another one? Real quick. Product. It's getting too excited here. Yep, promotion, if I can use that one, right? And one more on this side. You got one more? Place. Okay, good. And we can throw in packaging. You can sort of mix them up, right? So they're suggesting that what we should be thinking about is not only those traditional 4, but a new set of 4 that start with personalization, okay? I got to now remember these. Hold on a minute. I'm going to cheat. Yeah, I got 3 boys. I can't remember their names anymore. I'm getting old. So, yep, okay. Personalization, proactivity, right? The idea of having a proven set of capabilities, and one more, peer influenced. Okay, so the whole idea of community. Now, a lot of this is being driven by software. You know, the ability to be able to manage these kinds of interactions, be able to enhance these interactions, be able to monitor, measure, and hopefully monetize these interactions. Now, what's interesting is if you paid attention to today's news, there's a little company, anybody hear of a company called Microsoft? Is anybody from Microsoft here? Good. They told me that there wasn't anybody here from Microsoft, so I'm glad that's true, because I want to show you something. First of all, I was asking folks about the whole landline things. You know, there's certain folks in this room that use landlines still. Anybody in this audience who still reads a real newspaper? Raise your hands. Okay, so do I. And this is the reason why I do. If I didn't have this real newspaper, I would not see this awesome ad. And if you get a chance, go out in the lobby and get your own copy or borrow mine. This is an ad from Slack regarding Microsoft's new Teams software capabilities. And what they do in this ad, is a tremendous job of basically challenging what Microsoft is doing from a features and functions point of view and saying it's more than just features and functions. It's the customer experience. It's the customer experience which is allowing them to run circles basically around Microsoft when it comes to collaboration. And no matter what Microsoft wants to do in terms of matching them feature for function, it's that customer experience. So, getting back to my original thesis here, and make sure I've got enough time to get this done for us. The old world said you can only be successful in one of three areas. The new world requires you to be a successful provider of these skills in all three areas. And if you're not doing all of these things equally well, you are not going to be able to succeed in this marketplace or compete in this marketplace. So, here's the polling question. Oops, what happened to my polling question? There it is. What percentage of your product portfolio utilizes the cloud? Because my thesis is you can't get there without the cloud. Look at this, keep going. Keep going. I need a drink. That's pretty good. Starting to stabilize. We're almost done. Everybody done? Up. Okay, enough of this stuff. All right. You got the idea. All right, let's move on. So, here is probably the poster child for being able to break the mold of that discipline of market leaders. If you think about Salesforce.com, it's growing like gangbusters, right? It's defying the law of big numbers in terms of its growth. It's also, delivering good quality customer service, and that's why it has the land and expand capabilities that it does, and it has so many satisfied customers. It's improving its efficiencies along the way, and it's an innovator in its own category, right? Here's another example. Anybody ever hear of Amazon? Anybody use this service? Anybody got the Dash service? A couple people. Does it work? Brilliant, he says. Excellent. Well, this is just the beginning and the most obvious consumer example of what Amazon is hoping to achieve from an Internet of Things point of view. All right? Think about what's happening in the automotive industry and the driverless car. But even before we get to the driverless car, think about all of the new creature comforts, but more importantly, all of the safety devices with all of the information that they're gathering about your driving behavior to ensure that you have a better customer experience. Think about all that information and think about all that connectivity, none of which would be possible without the cloud. So as you think about all these things, think about the idea that we're moving away from standalone products. We're even moving beyond delivering them as business solutions and services, and think about how we're capturing all this information and converting it into a whole new level of value. And then you might want to think about what a guy around the corner from me in the Boston area has been saying for a long time, and that is, like it or not, we're all in the data business. And it's about how you monetize the value of that data. And here are three companies who are doing just that, and in fact, redefining their businesses. Another company around the corner from me in Boston is called Philips Lighting. They make light bulbs. But they're not selling light bulbs anymore, because if you know the light bulb business, there are two problems. Number one, the new light bulbs last forever. Number two, there are guys on the other side of the planet who will produce the same light bulb for a penny on the dollar. That's not a good business. So instead, they're delivering managed lighting services. So now they can help the users of those lights understand how those lights are being utilized, so they can help them economize on the use of those lights. Or you look at Emerson Corporation, who makes heating and cooling and other kinds of environmental systems, both for consumer and commercial markets. They're now calling themselves a comfort services business because they're connecting all those big systems together and capturing information to, again, enable not only commercial users, but the consumer market as well to better understand what's going on in their facilities. And then finally, Shlomo, you talked about the whole thing going on in agriculture, and we did not coordinate this, but we are of like minds. The whole idea of precision agriculture is becoming a big deal, and for some companies like John Deere, it's because in part, the people who use their equipment don't buy that equipment that often anymore because they really don't need to. The equipment lasts forever. So you put more sensors on the equipment, give them more information about how they're utilizing that equipment, and give them more data to help them improve the productivity of their farming efforts, and you have a whole new level of value. The folks who just moved to Boston have been driving this idea, but there are many others who are doing it as well. I just published a piece in sandhill.com that came out this morning about enterprises taking a lead in this area. So startups may be the innovators in terms of coming up with the new ideas, but enterprises are becoming the innovators about actually executing on them. Now, the challenge remains how you package, price, monitor, measure, and monetize the software that powers all of this. And that's my handoff to Layla to talk. Layla, tomato. I'm on East Coast time. I apologize. Yeah, I know. I get a lot worse than that. So before you come up, or as you're coming up, let me just review one more thing. And that is, come on up. Come on. One of the things we have been working on is a scorecard idea to help you understand where you're at in this process. And one of the things you could think about moving from the lower left to the upper right is, where is your focus? Is it on just protecting your software? Is it on the governance of that software? Is it on the provisioning of that software? Or is it on the monetization of that software? That's the progression in terms of the maturation process, okay? So with that, I'm out of here before I make any more mistakes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So you're going to come up and answer questions after? Yes. Okay. All right. So can you hear me? Everything's fine? I can't see you. I'm blinded, but okay. So in this part of my session together with Jeff, I'd like to talk about how software monetization, Jeff spoke about the storms, the disruptions, so just talk about how software monetization brings some rays of sunshine into today's cloudy climate. And before I start, we have a polling question. Which is the most important benefit of embracing a connected licensing approach? Is it reduced operational costs, access to new and niche markets, responding to customer requirements, faster customer onboarding, and usage tracking and controlling features? So let's see. This is so cool how it goes up and down. Okay. Wow, it's different than what I would have thought. Yeah, I thought it would be reduced operational costs, and it's the lowest. Wow. Okay, interesting. All right, can I continue? Okay. Okay, so we heard Jeff talk about the three disciplines that are required to achieve market leadership, and that, how 3 decades ago it was thought that organizations can focus at best on one of these, but that today there are technologies and tools that enable organizations to focus and succeed in all threes. And I want to say that software monetization is definitely one of these technologies, these tools. And I'll explain how you can break the barriers, so to speak, between the three disciplines in order to remain relevant and to become a market leader. So in this discussion, there are essentially three software monetization elements that come into play. There's connected licensing, which allows you to offer innovative and attractive business models. There's business intelligence, which allows you to gather information, important data about how your products are used. And entitlement management, which enables managing the entire licensing life cycle. I just want to emphasize that these three elements, not only are they not isolated, but they work together to enable winning all of these three disciplines. So for example, with connected licensing, you can create product differentiation, I'll talk about it in a minute, create innovation and leadership, but it also directly affects customer intimacy and operational efficiency. Business intelligence also impacts product leadership and operational efficiency. And entitlement management, in its turn, affects all three as well. So all three of them together create a holistic solution, so to speak. So let's just look at each one of these elements and see how they affect and bring value to you and your customers. So connected licensing, when licenses are connected, they can either be delivered on-premise or in the cloud, but either way, connectivity enables you to offer your customers attractive business models such as subscription, pay-per-use, pay after use, named users, and so forth. Furthermore, the terms of these license models can be changed and updated dynamically on the fly in real time without obstructing end customer experience. And what this means for you is that in addition to the raw functionality of your software, and as innovative as it might be, you can actually create another layer of differentiation and innovation by enabling your customers to purchase and consume the software according to their preferences, and you can offer much more competitive pricing with much lower entry costs for your customers. So take, for example, I keep on, every time I do, it sounds like everything's blowing up. Okay, so if we take, for example, the medical devices industry, where connectivity was traditionally, it was not a viable option due to security and other privacy concerns, and where actually the cost-benefit ratio never really weighed in favor of the cloud. But now cloud allows this industry to offer attractive models such as usage-based licensing, which is attractive both to the vendors and the end customers. So think of hospital and clinics that do see the advantage in having a large variety of business models available to them. So hospitals can now use devices that previously might have been cost prohibitive, but are now able to select maybe even certain features or scale down versions of the equipment which they couldn't do before. And this enables vendors to reach a much broader market and to do it in a much more automated way. So really, it's a win-win for customers and vendors. It's important to understand that when more advanced business models are implemented, you need to make sure that they don't affect customer experience in any way, and if anything, they will improve the customer experience. So subscriptions, for example, they need to be really flexible in order to be effective. If they're not flexible, then they don't offer any advantage compared to a standard purchase model. And usage-based, for example, if a usage-based license doesn't allow the usage to be scaled up or down, then it defeats the objective of rolling out a usage-based model in the first place. And this is where connectivity comes into play. Connectivity makes recurring revenue models such as subscriptions much easier to manage. It allows subscription renewals and updates to be automated, and then eliminating much of the overhead that basically discouraged a lot of vendors from adopting a subscription model in the first place. Connectivity not only allows you to provide upgrades and updates to your customer, it also enables bringing back information from your customers and data, predominantly on how your customers use and consume your software. You can get immediate customer feedback and gain knowledge on which features are used, which features are not used, how they're used, data that can help you plan where to invest in terms of product development and future roadmaps, and ultimately to create product differentiation and upselling opportunities. So all this data that you collect can be turned into actionable analytics. So for example, you can follow up on all the conversions from trials to fully paid products, and get insight into the likelihood of a purchase and which trials are working best for you. Or you can get marketing profiles and conclude that customers that use feature or module A are most likely to be interested also in module B. And then you can contact them and say, hey, you know, other customers found this module to be very useful. Would you like to try it? And you can also prevent customer attrition by identifying product features or maybe even flows that are instigators to customers abandoning your product. So pure SaaS vendors are able to take advantage of business intelligence by the pure, so to speak, by the pure nature of the SaaS platform. But now the cloud also extends this to on-premise applications. Connectivity gives you literally a gold mine of data to analyze and make product, enables you to make product-related decisions that ultimately have impact on product innovation and differentiation. So you can employ business intelligence and the ability to collect usage data and analyze it to create a greater customer intimacy. And beyond that, knowing how your software is consumed can later be translated into further optimizing business and pricing models. Okay, so we have connected licensing that allows you to roll out attractive business models, additional license terms, upgrades, etc. You have usage data that you can track. But how do you manage all of that? How do you manage the licensing lifecycle of your products? How do your customers manage it? How do your customers know what they're entitled to and manage their licenses? And this is where entitlement management comes into the picture. This is the back-end component of software monetization that enables you to control licenses and funnel all licensing systems, including Excuse me, just a second. Not very ladylike, but so it enables you to funnel licensing systems. It could be not only commercial licensing systems, but also homegrown and other third-party licensing systems into a single operating production platform that ultimately reduces IT and operational costs. And it's the backbone that lets you create product packages, entitlements, activations to upgrade and downgrade licenses and get the data reports you need for understanding product usage. We see lots of vendors they're still doing all of this manually and investing lots of resources and manpower into operations, doing all of this manually, that a rich and powerful entitlement management system can completely eliminate. A system that also integrates into multiple other business systems in your organization and that ensures that all these back-end processes are streamlined and automated. So as more products are introduced and the number of your transactions are growing, a strong connection between the system that generates and manages the software entitlements and the back office systems becomes much more vital. And integrating with the back office will reduce operational expenses and improve profitability. But there's a caveat here. Usually back-end systems focus on supporting the business. And usually customer experience is just an afterthought. There is massive operational efficiency that can be achieved with cloud and connected licensing, but if those don't translate into supreme customer experience, it's really hard to justify reduced operational costs when customer satisfaction tumbles. And visibility is the key here, both for vendors and for end customers who want transparency into everything. For vendors, it's quite obvious. Just think, for example, of a case where you have mergers and acquisitions, where you're inheriting a lot of different licensing systems and proprietary systems into which you don't have any visibility into, and a way to manage all of that. But end customers and the channel, they're also demanding visibility. It's not just the vendors. End customers want to know what they have, what they're entitled to, how much they used, and they want to get self-servicing tools in order to get insight into all of that. And the channel, it wants visibility into who has which entitlements and activations throughout the channel hierarchy. So entitlement management comprises of these capabilities with self-servicing tools such as end customer and channel portals. And I urge you all, we have the end customer and channel portals demos outside. I urge you all, I think they're closed now, but they will reopen tomorrow, to go and have a look at these two very important and powerful tools. What? No. Okay, so if it's 6 minutes, maybe I'll skip this. Well, I already skipped it. Everybody wants lunch, so. Okay, so we're in the best practices. So moving on to best practices. We're hearing lots of customers asking us, where do I begin? How do I begin? So firstly, you should analyze whether you've reached the tipping point. Are you really ready to enter the cloud space? This is a crucial question. that needs addressing from your entire organization. I mean, we saw what Mark presented in one of his slides about how software monetization in general, and definitely cloud, how it affects it affects every single discipline in the organization, every single department. You really need to ask that question, whether your organization is really ready for that. You know, licensing doesn't just impact the product. There are operational aspects, business processes involved, impact on sales support, renewals, and you need to get a holistic view of what problems you're actually trying to solve, and then work backwards into building and rolling out a strategy that addresses all of these. There isn't a single approach to software monetization nor connectivity. So you need to ask yourself, what are you actually trying to achieve? You know your market and your industry best, and who you're targeting, who are your customers, who you're delivering your software to, and how they want to consume it. And you need to ask these questions, and you need to answer these questions. Ask yourself, what are the benefits that your customers will gain from you moving to cloud? Are they ready? Are your customers ready? How do you want to reach your customers? Do they have connectivity? And how often do they have it? Are you agile enough to really accommodate to your customers' demands? What are your competitors doing? And are they, and does whatever it is they're doing, does it give them any kind of advantage? So you need to answer these questions to build a business case, whether this is the right time to go cloud. And because customer experience is involved here, there really must be a holistic approach and the need to get executives buy-in and acknowledgement that licensing and entitlement are really critical for you to move forward and in order to succeed. And sure, you want to have the best product out there, no doubt about that, but what you need also to start asking yourself is whether it's really easy to do business with you, and how the cloud can help you improve that and enhance your product by enhancing customer experience. And finally, as a tip, don't go there alone. You would never think of developing or implementing your own ERP or CRM system, critical systems, business systems. You just heard why software monetization, cloud connectivity, entitlement management are just as essential for your business. So let the experts help you plan your strategy and implement the solutions. So I think I'm going to let you all go to lunch in a second. Just to summarize, we saw that, I hope you're convinced that cloud-based software monetization does allow you to keep pace with the on-demand world, which is probably already leveraged by some of your customers and competitors. We do recognize that being a SaaS vendor is not the reality for many software vendors, but cloud licensing does enable you to gain some of the SaaS benefits without becoming a SaaS vendor, and even if you're delivering software on-premise. We're experiencing really stormy times. Jeff spoke about it, and a disruption that's caused by the cloud, but software and device vendors can capitalize on the opportunities that this disruption is causing. And finally, more than ever now, software monetization does give you the ability to reach customers, to become more innovative, to become more customer-centric, be more efficient operationally, and significantly to improve your chances of achieving success in the three disciplines that Jeff spoke about, and ultimately to become, market leaders and succeed. Thank you.